one of the cool perks of the job is that we get these what are called Air Force Global Strike Civic Leaders. And they come around from all the locations that I'll talk to you about here in a little while, from where we have airmen stationed across the United States. And each of these locations gets 2 or 3 civic leaders, people like you, that get to be part, and they're volunteers, by the way. They give far more than they receive, but what they do is advocate for our mission, our airmen, our families. And then I get the benefit of becoming really good friends with them. And because this is the headquarters, I kind of upped the game and said, we're going to have 5 civic leaders, okay, from Air Force Global Strike here at Barksdale. And they're all here tonight. And so, and you got to know, in the Air Force, you can't be anyone without a call sign, okay? You know, the Air Force, the Navy has Top Gun, and you've heard of Maverick and these cool names. Well, we have cool names in the Air Force, too. So I want to introduce to you my civic leaders, if I could, who I'm so proud of. And Buff, who's the oldest, not the oldest person, but the longest serving, who's been with us for so long. Buff Visor, beautiful wife, Pat. I might as well introduce my beautiful wife, Kim, and she's called ma'am. That's her call sign in my family. Stand up, Buff and Pat, please, so they can see you. Stand up, boss, ma'am, please. Stand up. This is...
We know who that is.
This is my bride, newlywed still of 39 years, so...
Wow, that's great.
Okay. Okay, John Atkins, he's got a good one. Jet. What do you think with 2 T's, man? Linda Bernanke and her beautiful husband, Rico. But
Beauty is here.
but guess what we call Linda? Blaze.
Blaze.
Okay.
I put out fires.
Okay. Okay. You do not mess with God. So the Reverend, stand up, please. We decided to name her Halo. What do you think of that? And then the coolest cat in the room right now, Don Horton. Okay, so if you've ever been around Don, you realize he is the man. But I go, the man, let's just call him the Don, after the Godfather, so Don. So those are am I cool? Do I have a cool gig or what, man? And over the last 2.5 years, I think, at least I have, formed tremendous bonds, and they are friends for life. But the things that they do for this command and for our airmen are really hard to describe. And so thank you for being here tonight. I don't know if Halo had to twist your arm or not, but I'm honored you. Lot of folks in the audience that I'm very familiar with. I've had the opportunity, Kim and I now, for the last 2.5 years to meet you, spend time with you. Thanks for coming out. This is touching to us. And I mean that. Very, very touched. I want to introduce 2 folks that don't get much recognition. My driver, Nate. Stand up, Nate. Okay. And I call him out because Nate represents the 33,000 airmen. Ordinary people who do extraordinary things. Nate is married to this drop-dead gorgeous bride, and they're expecting their 2nd baby here in the next 4 or 5 months. And so he's a young staff sergeant who just is amazing what he does, okay? And Nate, I'm very, very proud of you, as you know that. So tell Morgan I said that, will you? Yes, sir. She won't believe it unless you tell her I said it. And then there's Ashley Ann. Stand up, Ashley Ann. Ashley Ann represents the officers that we have in this command, young men and women of all ranks, all professions, who do all types of things. She's by trade what we call a security forces defender. All 95 pounds of her, do not mess with her. She's a sniper qualified lethal killer, okay? Who has deployed in combat 5 times. And she has a 3-year-old at home that's being babysat, and her husband James are just dear people to us. And she's officially called my aide de camp. which means she is my seeing eye dog and makes sure I get where I'm supposed to be on time. So thanks, Ashley. Very proud of you. So I'm going to go quick. I just, the topic was a little bit, what do we do? What does Air Force Global Strike and our airmen do for our nation? Okay. And what I normally like to lead with is, what are our priorities? This is kind of the scene setter. What do we focus on? And me being, they always say the pace of the wolf pack, for better or worse, the pace of the wolf pack is set by the lead wolf. So I'm that lead wolf. And so I have the opportunity to set the priorities. And our priorities are very simple. Job one is the mission. Okay, and we'll talk briefly about that. But a mission without airmen who perform that, okay, is undoable. And so the next priority that we spend all the time in the world on is the men and women who perform that mission. And then right on that heels are the families who support the men and women, the airmen who do the mission. And I like to say, airmen serve, families sacrifice. And that's real important that you know that. There's nothing easy about being a military family as we rip their children out of schools and high school and elementary school, move them in the middle of the year, deploy to some very difficult places around the globe. We ask a lot of our families, and they're so important to us. But if mission airmen and families are our priorities, it has to be rooted and grounded in something bigger than ourselves. And for us, those are our core values. That's our guiding light. That's our beacon. And it's simple. We have integrity first, service before self, and our goal is excellence in all we do, not perfection. I've only known of one person that ever was perfect. But we don't come to work going, today I think I'll just be average. We come to work striving to be better than we were yesterday. And if you believe those core values, they need to be reinforced by something, and that's our rich heritage. The men and women, like President Holloman's father, who went before us, who set the stage, who plowed those tough roads for us. Again, ordinary men and women who did extraordinary things when it was their turn. And so we rely on our heritage. And I like to say, and I plagiarize this from a pastor, but I take credit for it. History makes you smarter, but heritage will make you prouder. And we reflect a lot on our heritage in this command. A command that was born right after World War II ended, right after the nuclear era began, Strategic Air Command, and those great leaders that went before us. And that's who we are today as Air Force Global Strike. So I wanted to just set the stage with our priorities. And then I wanted to ask you to reflect, if you will, on what your Air Force does for our nation. This umbrella of security that men and women like Ashley and Nate provide. And in that picture, those aren't airmen. And there's not an airplane in that picture, okay? They're soldiers in the United States Army. And the picture was taken about 14 years ago, early in the Operation Iraq Freedom back in March of 2003. And it was a bunch of soldiers on a road march convoying a lot of equipment up through Iraq. And sometime during this road march, their troop commander, the convoy commander, probably about a 32-year-old, what they call a staff sergeant, an E6 in the Army, said, you know what we got to do? We got to get some rest. And so in the middle of the battlefield, this convoy stopped and dug these foxholes. This guy is not dead, he's sleeping, okay? This guy's reading. I like to think he's reading the scripture. I honestly believe that. Because we give our soldiers and airmen who deploy these little things you can fit in your pocket. If you go farther down, you'll see someone writing a letter. I'm a romantic at heart. I think he's writing a love letter to his sweetheart back home, okay? Gang, I've been in combat. The enemy doesn't have the luxury of sleeping in the middle of the battlefield, because the minute they do that, they're goners. because we will find them, we will fix them, we will target them, and we will take them out. Okay? Why can soldiers do that? Because of the umbrella of security your United States Air Force provides. And it provides that in a variety of forms. It provides that with the satellites that we operate in space that provide the GPS that you all take for granted, because you all navigate now on what? Do you go anywhere without turning your GPS on? That's operated by airmen in space. It's provided by B-52s and B-1s that fly over the top of them and provide close air support. A mission bombers were never intended or built to do, but it's what we need to do today. It's provided by F-16 fighters and A-10s. It's provided by medics that if anything happens to one of these, they will be rescued by an airman in an HH-60 helicopter and taken to the nearest trauma dispensary, whatever you want to call it. And Air Force medics, who I just met one who wants to become an Air Force medic, will heal them. They are delivered to the battlefield, they are supported while they're on the battlefield, and they are brought home from the battlefield by airmen. That is what your United States Air Force has been doing for airmen, soldiers, sailors, and Marines engaged in ground combat. And if you would think back to 2001 with me, how many millions of ground combatants have we sent into combat in the last 17 years? And while we've lost thousands, can you imagine the thousands upon thousands we would have lost without an Air Force? And your airmen and your Air Force brings those warriors home to reunite with their loved ones. So I'm really proud to be an airman. It doesn't matter what kind of airman I am. It doesn't matter what I do in my day job. I'm just proud to be associated with the Air Force. Next. But in this command, at Air Force Global Strike, we are really busy. You've got 33,000 airmen assigned to Air Force Global Strike Command that are gainfully employed. So I want to just take you a walk around the park, the world with me. Gang, I've never seen, 40 years now, 40 years active duty, 44 years of service will conclude this July. And I can tell you in my career, I've never seen the world more frisky than it is right now. I would submit to you it's not been this frisky since World War II. And what's protecting it from completely going off its axis is the men and women who wear your nation's cloth. We are busy. And what we do in Air Force Global Strike is deter bad people from wanting to deny us life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We assure the rest of the world who are freedom lovers like we are, and when that fails, guess what we do? And I'm sorry that we're in a Christian university, but I got to be candid with you. That's what warriors do. We strike. Okay? Because they're wolves, and we don't want the wolves to come eat the sheep. So we keep the wolves away so you all can enjoy this bastion of security and freedom. That's what we do. And we do it 24/7. And so let's start with the men and women that make up one of the legs of the nuclear triad in the intercontinental ballistic missile. And they serve alert with these nuclear warhead missiles 24/7. Never a day off. They work Christmas. They work through rain and snow. They never get a day off. And I'll tell you where they're located. I'm so proud of these guys and gals because they're the most responsive force in our nation's inventory. Underneath that picture, though, is what's going on in the East and South China Sea. And what you need to know is that the Chinese are aggressively proliferating their capabilities and claiming what we and other allies of ours consider to be international waters and territory. And Admiral Harris, the commander of Pacific Command over in Honolulu, Hawaii, his job is to deter the Chinese from doing that. But he can't do it through talk. So right now, from Barksdale Air Force Base, you have 500 airmen deployed to Guam, Anderson Air Force Base, that are there with their B-52s that fly in these international waters as a show of force and a deterrent and assurance. And it's a long 6 months out of crack that they leave their families behind. Yes, they will miss Super Bowl Sunday because they're deployed. Step over to this guy, the Ayatollah and the leader of Iran. And we're not sure what Iran is up to with its nuclear inventory. I don't believe it's up to anything good, but I do know this about Iran. It's a very, very asymmetric threat for the United States. And wherever there is violent extremism going on, rest assured Iran's fingerprints are all over that. You've heard of Hezbollah, Hamas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. Guess who funds, sponsors, and trains those terrorist organizations? That country. And that country is a big focal point for this command. And we have organizations in this command, I won't go into the details, that every day, if called on, are ready to strike in pretty short order. Next to them is the president of Russia, prime minister. When I came into the Air Force in 1974 and then was commissioned in 1979, our nation's number one existential threat was the Soviet Union, right? And then what happened? We won. The Cold War, we declared victory 1990. Kim and I, 1989, I'll never forget. We had just left Germany. We went to Misawa Air Base, Japan. And they had one channel that we got to watch at Misawa Air Base, Japan on what was called Far Eastern Network. And it was a fledgling organization, news company called CNN. You ever heard of them? And Kim turned on the TV, I walked in the door, and on the TV were West Germans sitting on the wall in Berlin doing what? Knocking it down. And we thought, man, we have got peace in our lifetime. Right? The wall came down. I can't tell you what it's like if you've never been to Berlin before the wall came down, what that experience was like. It was life-changing to Kim and I. We went there several times. I said, my children will never experience this world that's so divided. It's going to be here for a long time. But overnight, it came down. And we became friends, we thought. We were talking in 1999 when I was in the Pentagon as a lowly lieutenant colonel, John. Where's John? John Odom. A lowly lieutenant colonel, that we were going to bring Russia into the NATO alliance. How'd that work out for us? What happened in 2014? Crimea got invaded, the Ukraine, and his true intentions. He wants to reemerge as the superpower, what he rightfully believes is Russia's place in the world. And let me tell you, gang, they are proliferating their military arsenal at an unprecedented rate to include modernizing all their nuclear capabilities. That is happening as you and I are sitting here. And so we provide forces to the brave men and women that serve in the European theater. Okay, and my dear friends are over there. General Todd Walters is the commander of U.S. Air Forces Europe. And we often have B-1s, B-52s, and B-2 bombers that operate out of the United Kingdom to make sure we are signaling to Russia, we see you, we know what you're up to, don't mess with us. But it comes at what? A cost. Come down here. This unbelievable wife of mine has traveled with me around the world And in 1994, her and I and our 2 children went to South Korea. At the time, his grandfather was the dictator of North Korea. And he was a bad cat. About 7 years later, 8 years later, I went to Korea again by myself this time to Kunsan Air Base as the wing commander for a year, and his father was the dictator of North Korea. I have 4 years of sweat equity in this nation. I am well versed in why there's a North and South Korea, and I have nothing but love in my heart for what the Republic of Korea is and what they represent. And this guy, Kim Jong-un, now the grandson to his Kim Il-sung, makes his grandfather and father look like altar boys. Okay? So, remember I told you about what's going on here? Those men and women from Barksdale, they're in a 3-point stance right now. They're in a 3-point stance if we got to go do something in Korea. And I don't want to scare you. It's not my job. But we are closer to war with Korea than we've been since it ended in 1953. Okay? Don't lose sleep over it because, trust me, you have men and women that I serve with who are ready to answer the call. This isn't going away, gang. Go back to when? You want to go back to 1981, 82 with the Beirut barracks bombing? You want to go to the coal? Where do you want to pick? Okay, but what we define as the defining moment was 2001, September 11th, right? We have now been at war with violent extremists aggressively for 17 years. And count on 17 more. Count on 30 more. Because the threat isn't going to go away. It's going to shift, it's going to move. But this is what I call it. I'm a football fan. Anyone else like football? The only time this is good news is an away game. This is good news. We're not playing at home, are we? Where's the fight at? It's an away game. You know why it's an away game? Because of these men and women who serve. And so right now, we have a bomber squadron from Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota, called the 69th Bomb Squadron, B-52s again. I'm taking these guys up there. The good news is it's only going to be a low of 12 degrees when they land on Tuesday. We got sheepdogs that are flying combat. Right now, as we sit in the comfort of this beautiful university, you got men and women flying over the skies of Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan right now, getting after who? Them. Last one I'll talk to you about. What do you think that boat is a representation of? Yeah, it's not Somalia pilots. It's actually a fast boat with guys carrying heavy narcotics. They're transnational organized criminals, okay? They originate out of South America through Central America, Caribbean, and they bring this stuff into your nation. I used to say 40,000. The president corrected me. I think last year we had 65,000 Americans die from drug overdose in this nation. We're the #1 consumer of cocaine in the world. So shame on us. But what you have is we work with what's called Joint Interagency Task Force Southern out of Key West, Florida, and B-1s and B-52s with this really cool thing called a targeting pod, fly over the Caribbean. They will find them on their targeting pod. They will fix them. They will track them. And they will call the Coast Guard in to roll them up before they can deliver this stuff. Sometimes we get really cool and lucky and the guys know they're captured and they've been caught. And so they dump the stuff overboard. Tens of millions of dollars of illicit drugs. They hate when they do that. The sharks love it. That is, again, another example. So if you just paid attention to anything I said, 24/7. So the question is, what do we do for you? 24/7, the nuclear umbrella of security. We deter bad guys from using nuclear weapons, and we do what? We assure our allies not to have nuclear weapons because we will do it for them. We are engaged in the Pacific region and the East-South China Sea. We are eyeballs on Iran. We are supporting operations in the European theater. We are gainfully flying missions and prepared to go in North Korea. We are fighting violent extremists, and we are protecting illicit drugs from coming in your nation. We call that different combatant commands that we have. When you look at the continents, the only continent your airmen from Air Force Global Strike are not engaged in tonight is Antarctica. And none of these are episodic, so here's your takeaway. Everything I just told is going on simultaneously. We don't just get to concentrate on this and then next month let me do this. We are working all these things simultaneously. Make sense? Okay, next. So you're going to love this. I hope. Run it. So the wolves are barking. They eat the sheep and we're the sheepdogs.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has...
We were the only country to ever use an atomic bomb in war. 30,000 feet, looking down on the city. It took 45 seconds from the time it left the aircraft to detonation. The in-between time. The world that was, and the world that would be. The crew counted and waited for a flash of light to change forever the way countries talk to each other. Cold wars, brinkmanship, trust but verify, deterrence. The Cuban Missile Crisis, Khrushchev, Kim Jong-un. Old allies, new enemies. We tell people back home we work with nuclear weapons, and they want to joke about movies they've seen. Diffusing warheads with seconds to spare. Super villains. We laugh, we're human, but they have no idea. Nobody does. It is our duty, our privilege, to maintain the integrity of our nation's shield. We are our nation's shield. We serve in the middle of nowhere, on the edge of history. We serve on the global stage of policy, diplomacy, leverage, and madmen. We're not out here babysitting metal, twiddling thumbs, or flying in circles. We are airmen in the United States Air Force. The world is in constant chaos, so we are on constant alert. We are here to keep the world from boiling over. We work as a team. There can be no weakness. There can be no vulnerability. Never. The world is watching. This is a destructive force so terrifying, its very existence is our weapon. And make no mistake about it, we are here to scare the living hell out of our enemies. Scare them with our power, our resolve, our dedication, our vigilance. We will not be the ones to blink. We are fully aware that should these weapons ever be used, the final page of history is in our hands. You can't live your life within inches of a nuclear weapon and not feel the weight of the world. Our mission is to carry that weight. Theodore Roosevelt said, "Speak softly and carry a big stick."
Yeah. So I already covered this. Right now tonight, these are all the things we're doing around your globe. Next. Here's where we're located. Pretty spread out, okay? We're also normally at any one given time, we're also in Fairford, England, the Al Udeid in Qatar in the Middle East, and over at Anderson Air Force Base in Guam, in other places. So that's where your men and women are stationed. Next. We have three legs of our little operation too. The Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, we're responsible for all bomber operations, conventional and nuclear. And we have the responsibility for the national leadership in nuclear command and control communication. Don't let that intimidate you. It's to give the president, our nation's worst day, the ability to communicate to whoever, whenever, wherever he needs to communicate. Think of 9/11 and how President Bush had to make decisions and have high-level discussions with international and national leaders. we're responsible to make sure that communication is always available to the president. Next. So this is why it's relevant, gang. And I hope I get some hard questions from some of the students I'm going to meet with. We can debate nuclear weapons all you want. You ain't going to put that genie back in the bottle. The world has them. So if the world has them fundamentally, guess what? We have to have them, and we have to be willing to use them, and we have to make sure that the enemy knows that we are willing to use them, and it'll deter them from even giving it one iota of thought. Do you understand that? We got to make sure our allies know, because we don't want them to proliferate and build their own, because if we don't provide them that security, what are they forced to do? Build their own. And the adversaries are not laying down. I can assure you that China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia is spending unprecedented dollars in their national treasure on the modernization of their nuclear capabilities and their military. You hear me? I'm not making this up. We have to modernize, and we are. And at the end of the day, our modernization is the fraction of the budget of what our national treasure is. You all have insurance, I assume, most of you, right? We're your insurance policy. You hear that? Okay. Imagine what it'd be like without insurance if something bad happened. Next. So then I'll just close with this. I could go on and on. I'm so proud of talking about these guys and gals. But I just kind of wanted to say, you know, one of the things I try to mention as I get off the stage is, particularly the audience, is just a reflection on what's important in your life. And I hope someone asks me a question about, well, why do you do what you do? And I'll tell them so you can ask me that question. Okay? So, you know, yeah, it's pretty cool. Those boys in the upper left, they're really handsome, aren't they? Like their granddad.
They look familiar.
But so that picture was taken, gosh, I think 6 or 7 years ago. And I thought I was at the end of my career back then, so ask him how we're doing so far. But we were less fortunate blessed to live in Tucson, Arizona, at Davis Moth, and my responsibilities then were to kind of look after our backyard in the Central and South America and the Caribbean. But when we were home, it was the coolest house we've ever lived in. The weather is marvelous. But my grandchildren got to come and stay about 2 months because their dad was deployed for a long time. And they were inside while Kim was in the backyard watering the garden. And what we do, a tradition we have in the military bases, is normally at 1700, 5 o'clock, or 4:30, or 5:30, but we'll normally average 5 o'clock. We do homage to our nation's flag, and we play Retreat in the national anthem. And it's sent all across the base, and the expectation is everyone stops. Cars stop moving, and you stand and you put your hand over your heart or you salute. Well, they heard the music inside watching TV, and they just come running outside. And they faced the sound of the music, and that's what you see. And Kim took that picture. Is that not cool? No. Now, Luke in the green shirt, he is a Las Vegas bettor, and he is doubling down his odds. So fast forward, here it is, 13. 10 will be 7 in 6 days, 7 days. Evie Joy by the way. A good, strong name, Eli in Luke. So that's my reason why I do what I do. That's why I've given 40 years of my professional life to this. That's why I fight bad people, so that bad people don't hurt good people and so that our children and your children and grandchildren can live in what we call some semblance of peace. Peace is not an entitlement, folks. And it isn't a right. You have to fight for it every day. You hear me? So that's why Kim and I do this. And this beautiful woman's been on this journey with me. And there's my son, Bryson, and we were a lot younger then when that picture was taken. And there's Brooke, and she hasn't changed a day. And she's the mother of now a 13-year-old. And that picture was taken, if I remember, honey, correct my memory, I think the day before I left for 13 months to go to combat. And I got to be honest, I didn't know if I was going to make it home or not. And that picture was taken 13 months later, that what? The day I got home. So it's time for me to stage left. But you know, last thing next. We can't do it without you. So this wonderful community called Bossier City, Shreveport is important to us because you welcome my family, our airmen, into your family. And you treat us with dignity and respect, and you support us. And you advocate for us the way I can't advocate for. Okay? All I ask is one favor. When you see some young airman, okay, or some soldier or some young Marine or sailor, just tell them thanks. Will you? God bless you. Thanks. Sit. Go eat that cheese before I do, and Kim has me on a diet, okay?
Thank you, General. It's an honor to have you as part of our community. Like the Air Force, Centenary College has a mission. Our defining mission is student learning. And the General's committed. He's got a room full of students waiting to hear him. So he's going to be whisked away to fulfill our mission. I'm going to allow one very short question. So make a short question and a very short response.
Yes, sir.
Says gently to a 4-star general. Does have something burning on their hearts?
Budget.
Okay, good. So we have to get a budget approved. And this will be short. But I feel compelled to say this. We have been too quiet, certainly at my level. There's one job Congress has to do. One job. Above all else, the legislative branch of government. Their number one job is every year to appropriate for this nation. And they have miserably failed us. And you need to be indignant with your congressmen and your senators and tell them to start doing their job. You hear me?
Yes, sir.
There is no excuse for what they're doing. And it is your security and their security they're playing with. And we are facing another government shutdown in 6 days. And even if we don't, we're having a continuing resolution, and those are terrible, terrible way to do business. I know there are a lot of businessmen out here. You don't work on last year's budget, do you? That is a losing proposition. And we are unable to execute and do all the things we need to do fight tonight and prepare for the fight in 2030 when we don't have a budget. And so I would ask you to ask your congressional leaders to do their job. How's that sound?
Deal.
Okay, that's my short answer on the budget.
Thank you. Thank you, General.
I'm retiring in July. See you all later.
Thank you for coming. Please stay and have a glass of wine and enjoy our fellowship. I do want to lift up one person I see in the audience, and I think I'm missing his better half. Luke, is Cherie not here?
She's studying over at Bethel.
So Luke Broninger, stand up. He's one of our graduates and a veteran. General Rand alluded to his wife, who is also a veteran, was injured in a training accident and has now, much to Centenary's benefit, come back and is engaged in our world famous pre-med program so that she can re-enter as a military physician. And so we're very proud of both of them, and encourage you to have a chat with Luke. We are a proud Yellow Ribbon school here, and we love our vets. Thank you for coming. I'll take advantage of this group to say, please pray for us, as well as praying for our military. Every Tuesday morning at 8:30, we start our cabinet meeting with a prayer, and if you need some advice, I usually close our opening prayer with "Grant us wisdom, grant us courage." We need it here at Centenary. We feel the support of the community. We're very grateful. So glad you all could come, and enjoy some further reception time, and be safe on your way home. Thanks again to Ross Barrett and the other people that made tonight happen. Thank you.